To my left is Shane Mitchell, a man who needs no introduction, who is the head of digital at Mediacorp. To his immediate left is Thomas Brinkmann, who is the managing director and CFO of Mairdumont, which is a travel publishing house. And to his left is Ruben Vardayan, who is the CEO of Joomag, which is a digital publisher and helps different media entities make content online or bring their content online. Correct me if I'm wrong about that, but roughly. And last but certainly not least is Peter Kennedy, the executive chairman of Hurbert Burda Media Asia. So it's a really amazing panel, and we're going to talk about the future of media. Before we get into the future of media, gentlemen, I'd like us to talk a little bit about the present of media. And I'll just start us off with this one question. How screwed are we all right now by the new platforms that exist? How badly are we going to get disrupted, and when am I going to be out of a job?
Well, I might start off with that one. I think it's fair to say that it's been a period of disruption that's pretty much started since 1996 when the internet first started getting some traction. And back in sort of 98, 99, when we were still on 56K dial-up, we were profoundly affected by suddenly the wealth of media content that we had available to us. Since then, obviously, with the rise of social media and new media entrants in that space, we're constantly being kept on our toes. So I think there's no doubt that you're going to be in a job for quite some time to come. And I think what we've now had to do is become accustomed to change. Change is something that we resisted for a very long time. But I think it's now something that we embrace on a daily basis.
Right. Mr. Brinkmann?
Of course, Sean, we feel a very huge impact on our business, but we are not destroyed. And we are not thinking in the categories of, is it this or that? As far as we feel, it is both and. It means we still believe, and that is our present experience, we still believe in curated content, and we have in addition, of course, social media and other platforms in combination.
Well, we'll talk about that. And Ruben, since you're one of the entities that's doing the destroying, we're just going to skip you right now because you really are, you're going to be the guy that takes me out of a job. And I'm not so happy about it, but I'll deal. But moving along, sir, are we screwed or not screwed?
Not quite.
Okay.
But I have to say that I had such a great life about 12 years ago before I started. I was in an old print media company selling magazines. We had 2 fat pipes of revenue. We had ad pages. We had circ revenue. We went and saw our advertisers. We kind of chatted to them a bit, took them out to lunch, signed contracts for $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 at $30,000, $40,000 a page. And life was really great. Now, of course, those days are ist vorbei, as we say in Germany. They're gone. They will never come back. Now our page rates have stayed, our yields have stayed flat probably for 8 years while our costs have risen. It took us a long time to understand that we would not be able to increase price, and any business that cannot increase price and keeps its cost structure the same is doomed to extinction. However, we'd made huge profits for 30 years, so we had enough time, even though we were late, we had enough time to start rejigging our businesses and cutting a lot of cost out. It's been an awful, traumatic, ghastly experience. We still have a ways to go, and instead of having 2 fat, lovely revenue streams, we now have multiple peanuts revenue streams that we have to deal with. So
can you have revenue streams of peanuts? Do you monetize the peanuts? How are you?
Well, it's scale, isn't it? Well, you've got to scale, Well, it's hard to scale if you are a magazine with a specific topic. You can't be all things to all men.
All right. Woes aside. This is not about our present state and however terrible it may be. It's about our glorious future. And since we're going to be talking about our glorious future, I'd like to play a little bit of a thinking game with y'all. If you were to project 5 years out, how differently will your businesses look and what will be the main driver of that difference? What's going to be the key factor that transforms your business, and what will the business look like in 5 years? And I will go down the road, but we'll start over there and then go back.
Well, we've already started that process. And the first is to look at content agnostically from traditional brands. So at Burda, we're looking at producing content across magazine brand and across devices and across outlets. And we're also looking at technologies that allow us to hook advertising onto content no matter where the content ends up. That's how I see it within 5 years.
All right, and Ruben, what are y'all going to look like in 5 years, other than straddling the media space like a colossus?
So it will be actually, everything is changing, but it's changing, so we're still publishing curated content. So what changed now is that anyone in the world, out of 7 billion people, is able to create something curated with a small team or just self-publish like Amazon did with the book publishers. So what we did, we say, hey, come to our platform and create something very niche, very targeted. And maybe just 5,000 people will be reading that magazine, like the magazine for golfing or like diving. So none of the big publishers in print especially are preparing those magazines because they are not universal, and it's very difficult to find some relative ads, and it's difficult for circulation, for printing, etc. So what we're trying to disrupt, we believe that 5 years from now on, so there will be a lot of content, very reputable still curated, and people will be able to consume more information, and the advertisers, there will be still ROI for them as well, because they'll be just paying for traffic quality. See?
Herr Brinkmann, what is your business going to be looking like?
So we'll be, yeah.
No, go ahead.
Sure.
I didn't let you finish.
So we're working in the advertising, and so we believe that the big print publishers, so they try to penetrate into digital market, and they try to sell the publication. We believe that publication should be free of charge, and they should be charging for the ads.
Huh. Charging for the ads, the publication.
Exactly.
That's where they're going to make their money. Mr. Brinkmann, what's your...
You know, our chance is, John, media isn't media. We are lucky enough to live in a niche of information. That means we are the world's biggest player in travel-related information. Still in the lucky position, as Peter mentioned before, to have a big stream and quite a sane stream of revenue. I believe that also within 5 years, we'll have a strong revenue stream which might change in itself. That means we will have a decrease in the book business, and we have an increase in other forms and formats on deploying content in digitized formats.
So just to make sure,
other regions of the world, that's the second step.
So just to make sure I understand you, you're going to get more money from your book business in 5 years than you do now.
Yes.
You are going to be getting it from different regions of the world, an expanded global reach.
And on other products and other forms in digitized formats.
What market are y'all traded on? How do I invest?
Well, number one is Asia.
Right.
Of course, we are a Europe-born and German-based company, and we have decided 2 years ago to invest in Asia. We are just about to take care of our joint venture in Beijing, People's Republic of China. And the second thing is that, of course, we are transferring our revenue stream right now into modern technologies and techniques for advertisement. That means programmatic. That means to use other tools, also comprising partnerships.
Okay. And Shane, are people going to be watching television? Are they going to be watching tablets? Where are they going to be consuming the content that y'all are producing in 5 years? And what is that? How is that going to be different for you?
So the first thing I'll kind of say is I'm always reminded of that cliche. Never make predictions, especially about the future. And I think in digital, looking forward 5 years is a very long and speculative view. So I might look at something a bit shorter. But in answer to your question, I think people's screen time is increasing all the time. It's we used to talk about television and we used to talk about broadcast, but we're now talking about screen time.
Right.
And what we're still going to be very much in is in the business of creating high quality content. So whether it's high quality dramas, Chinese dramas, or whether it's current affairs, I think the difference in our business is that for a long time our business was very simple. We used to use content as a proxy for audience, and so we could sell against that. Advertisers, they knew roughly who we were reaching, with a particular measurement system, and they knew the content of the show or the magazine or the website that we were producing. So the big change for us is really going to be about how advertisers are connecting with our audiences using data, so being a lot more targeted. And we're already starting to see that now. About 25% of digital advertising is now bought or traded programmatically.
Right.
And that's using vast data repositories, both that the publisher owns and also third parties.
Right.
So we're still very much going to be in the content business, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to be very much in the data and audience business too.
Well, I mean, I hate to get metaphysical about it, but as more brands get into creating their own content and producing their own entertainment or content themselves and distributing it over whatever media platform they want to now, because every media publisher is now actually just a platform for serving more ads to people in whatever format the advertisers want to send it. What does it mean to be producing content at all as a TV station, as radio, as a publisher? What is your value add when the advertisers are just doing it themselves?
Well, we see that as a fantastic opportunity for a start. Not every brand wants to create its own brand newsroom. Not every brand wants to invest in infrastructure, studios, or the various other things they're going to need to produce quality content. And I think, the reality is there's an enormous amount of content that's being made available every single day, from people unboxing the latest iPhone to makeup tips on YouTube. But there's always a market for premium content, and premium brands do want to be associated with premium content. And we're in a great position to help them do that. We can help them create it, we can help them ideate it, and we can help them distribute it. And that's something that we see as a big strength that we can capitalize on.
And so moving from this notion of content, and feel free, gentlemen, to chime in or return to it if you want to, but I'd like to move along to another point, which is about the platforms themselves and how they're changing the ways in which we consume or even generate content. So with Mr. Brinkmann, with your company, we were talking about this outside, I don't use guides anymore. I post on Facebook, and I ask my friends on Facebook who live in a city what I should do when I'm in that city. How is Facebook a competitor? Is it its own content creation platform? What are they advertising? Like, what do they do to your business?
Of course, Facebook and the social medias are today's competitors to the ancient print business. There's no doubt about that. Our answer goes into two directions. Number one is the value we add is that our authors, let's say, for example, Marco Polo, they are chosen living in that destination they are writing on. And they are obligated to update the information, even to supply it in the internet, to really have updated content. That is answer in direction number one. Direction number two is, for instance, Mairdumont has just recently invested into another company in Berlin-based called Trips by Tips. They have a network of about 7,000 authors, but not delivering crowd content, but pre-chosen 7 authors, preparing content on demand, especially for B2B purposes. And so we are trying, this is one example where we shift our model and where we would head to in the future.
Right. Does this present an opportunity for a company like Joomag for publishers to sort of get?
So I was wondering, the 70,000 people who were writing, so are they freelancers or they were working for you guys?
Yeah, they are freelancers.
So why not they can go also and publish the same articles, let's say at Joomag, and monetize it there. And so this additional 70,000 publishers for us.
Yeah,
so basically that's what we are doing, and that's why we have 270,000 publishers right now. So we don't limit anyone, and so for sure this is a huge opportunity for all of us.
Fantastic.
So yeah.
Joomag pitch aside, and if there are any freelancers in the audience, there you go. There's your opportunity to become a media mogul. When you look at Facebook or Joomag, do you see them as a competitor, or what are they doing to y'all's business?
Basically, no, because I believe these are two different stuff. Oh, okay, sorry.
Well, yeah, of course they're competitors.
Right.
But I somewhat dispute the notion that the quality of a lot of this content is the same quality that traditional publishers produce. And I think the reason that we continue to survive is that people come for us because we do have credibility. Our content does have legs. If it didn't, then we would definitely disappear. But as long as we can maintain that edge and keep our skills on that content, then I think there's a future. For example, one of the things that we're interested in terms of writing content for e-commerce. And for example, if you have enough websites, if you have the technology, let's say you're linked in to a dozen price comparison sites, you're getting data on what's selling or what's not selling. And let's say you find out that there are 10,000 SKUs of L'Oreal something skin cream that are not selling.
Right.
You should be able to go to L'Oreal and say, hey, we'll do some flash sales and some pop-up shops, and we'll put them all across our websites,
Right.
and we will sell these SKUs, and you give us a rev share. This is the kind of stuff that
Right.
we have to start doing. And
So it's about flexibility. The new digital age is about flexibility and being able
Absolutely.
to work with the sort of advertisers
Yep,
to push more product out the door.
I would like to mention another aspect, John, if you don't
Please
mind.
do. No, go ahead. Interactivity. That's what we're all about here. IRL. Even.
You know, where we see chances is within one fact. Number one, we have created a model called the travel circle. That means initially you get the idea of traveling to some destination or whatever. You dream of it. Then it gets more and more solid. And all of a sudden, you know, I want to go to Bali. Now you are closer to really hard information.
Right.
The first step, some soft information, then harder information. Then even you decide on where do I get my bookings for accommodation, for flights, for transportation, for entertainment, for whatever. Then you are in Bali,
Right.
in my example. And afterwards,
I wish.
you are home again, and you want to preserve your memories, however. In all those different stations of that life circles, there are different products
Right.
today's consumer and today's traveler use. But we still face that being there and with a solid basic information that is still valid, there's a chance for good prepared print.
Right.
Other things, like sharing pictures after coming home, that won't ever be a claim for Marco Polo. Of course, this will happen in social media.
Right.
And this is one example of the combination we are thinking in.
I might want to chime in on this one as well, because our total media consumption isn't diminishing, it's growing. You know, so the proliferation of smartphones and tablets that we have an always-on culture now. So our previous media opportunities were limited to our newspapers, our magazines, or the TV that we used to watch when we get home. So now what I think we're doing as media companies is we're thinking more like marketers and less like media
Right.
companies. And marketers talk about a consumer pathway to purchase. And during that pathway, they, as you pointed out, they might be in that inspiration. It's like, I want that dream holiday, or what's my bucket list?
Right.
And the inspiration of that can come in many forms. It could come from a magazine, it could come from a television show. Many travel shows we produce for television are just essentially magazines on TV.
Right.
However, when we start to go into that consideration space, in the past, we used to take quite quick shortcuts. We used to book with a tour operator because we trusted their brand. So now we have much more sources of information. So along that pathway to purchase, there's so many more opportunities to create, curate, and distribute content and to monetize that for media companies. So I think what we're doing is we're having to be more like marketers and start to think about that pathway and think about the content that we're creating and where we're adding value along that pathway.
When you talk about when you talk about sort of creating value and you talk about the pathway to sort of reaching and engaging the consumer, what role do these new media platforms play? And in addition to being competitors, you've got things like YouTube, you've got new sort of media format that you can distribute content in now across different properties, because it's not that people are just consuming on paper, but it's this interactive device, right? And for a long time, content didn't keep up with the sort of panoply of options that are available. And I think that one of the interesting things, and I'd love to see how your businesses are responding to it, is this ability to create a 360-degree media company that is both engaging in video, in print, in every format that a tablet or that an iPhone or whatever the device is can display. How important is video to y'all's future? How important are apps to your future? What does that do for engagement? And what does it mean to start generating those things and thinking about those as content as well? Take it away.
Let me try to unpack that question.
Sorry, there's a lot of stuff in there. That's my fault.
So let's start off with video.
Yeah.
Whether you talk to Cisco or Google, who are quite vocal on talking about the, I guess, the bandwidth that video is taking up, they roughly, between 2017 2018, they're thinking that roughly 80-85% of the world's internet traffic is going to be video. And we as a television company, and we also have a catch-up TV service, an over-the-top service as well, are very much in that space. So you could argue that the playing field is tilting somewhat in our favor. To the second part of what you were saying, which is around these other platforms and being a 360 media company, it's it's a double-edged sword, because in many ways, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, these are our amplification channels. These are the ways by which we attract new audiences, and we let new audiences know what content and shows that we're putting on. So they're vitally important for us, for our brands. On the other hand, I hear stories of, there's a publisher I know down in Sydney who has a fantastic travel site aimed at young people, who's getting 80% of their traffic from Facebook. So that actually creates a material risk for their business. One change of an algorithm, and suddenly they've got a big impact on their business. Yeah. So I think, these channels are where people are, and we need to be in places where we can give that content easily to our audiences. That's where they are. We can't fight where they are. Right. But at the same time, we need to be very, very careful about how we invest our efforts and how much dependence we put on them.
Is Marco Polo producing travel shows? Are you going to do video more, or apps?
Yes, of course.
We believe
in, yeah, I know. We talk about that later. Of course, we believe.
Look at this, partnerships on stage.
Of course, we believe in video.
Making friends.
Everything else wouldn't have a close view on this world.
Yeah.
But, the second part of my answer heads into another direction. The abundancy of information, also in video information in the internet, sometimes is even more heavy to cope with for the traveler than if a trusted brand, and if you trust a brand, the brand can filter down and can absorb what you don't need. If we succeed, that is my answer on our mission in that direction. If we succeed in channeling the interest under the roof of a trusted brand, there come up new chances we don't even see today.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, and I'm sorry to interrupt, and we're going to get to y'all later on this point, but I wanted to tie this into the next panel, actually, which I thought was quite interesting. There are ways to increase engagement through gamification, right, which is the next panel that's coming on, and content breeds games, right? There are lots of ways in which you can create apps or games that are branded around sort of the different user experiences that y'all have with your different media outlets and publications that sort of just create opportunities. And in that sense, when you think about the future of media content, it's pretty wide open, right? There are lots of ways to try and engage a reader or a consumer through new media. With Joomag, are you looking at video as a platform? Are you looking at sort of ways to help people get into these other aspects of the digital media content?
Absolutely. So I'll just bring numbers. So 2 years ago, we made a test. So we had two versions of the same magazine. One is the static version and the other with the videos. So we had 6 times more engagement with the interactive version that has just videos. And on top of that, when we added slideshows, when we added some more games, so it increased up to 12 times. So that means that, yes, readers nowadays, they don't like to read something. They like to get some images, videos, consume via games, and other stuff like that. So definitely, so this is something we're looking for as well, and that's why it's right now possible to include interactive stuff in Joomag magazines as well.
And when you think about how y'all are playing with video stuff at Burda, what are you thinking about?
So absolutely. So this is a huge distribution channel, and that's why we're using partnership with YouTube, Vimeo as well, and would like to bring those people to our platform as well.
Right. Okay. And at Burda, what are you doing? Are you looking at apps? Are you looking at games? Are you
We're certainly looking at apps. We're looking at video.
Right.
We've done quite a lot of work on it.
Right.
You know, we still face the daunting challenges once you go, when you reach scale, that you need to have scale in order to monetize. And it's much harder to monetize if you are in our kind of a business segment than it is if you're Joomag or something where anything, you know, you've got that scalability. But I think, to come back to a point that was made earlier, I think the reason that we will survive and continue to survive is trust and credibility, which a lot of content simply doesn't have. And as long as we can continue as publishers to to engender this trust, to engender this credibility, then I think our brands will survive.
Well, to play devil's advocate, when you look at the ways in which these new media stars have been created, they're intensely sort of homegrown, right? It's not that someone has an imprimatur of being an expert or have worked in journalism for a long time. It's not that someone's a celebrity in the traditional sense. You're talking about Bethany Moda, who is a tween-age girl who, you know, is a likable personality on YouTube, who like wears cute clothes and like certain kinds of makeup, and she's got millions of followers. Now that sort of, I think, should give pause to anyone who's like, I've got, you know, it's a credibility issue, or it's the credibility that we bring as a traditional media publisher. The millennials, or there's a new type of consumer that looks at that and sees that as being very much a sort of representative of an old guard that doesn't appeal to their sensibility at all, and that they don't want. They want someone who is like experiencing these things along with them in a certain sense, no?
Well, if you look at the data, there is still, even among millennials, there is still quite a lot of attachment to, for want of a better term, curated content. So I'm not downcast. Of course, I hate these girls who make millions from painting their nails on YouTube. But on the other hand, I say good luck to them. They're entrepreneurs. We should support them. But we're holding our own in this space.
Right.
Because we're doing stuff that we think ultimately will prove equally interesting. We're creating people who can brand themselves on video and ultimately garner lots of paid views, etc. So yeah, it's a competitive situation. You know, we got to fight them. So,
but again, it's not either or; it's both ends.
Well, yeah, I think Mediacorp's probably taking a slightly different approach to that. I think we realised very early on that nobody has a monopoly on great ideas or innovation, and what we're clearly seeing on YouTube and other these channels is great innovation. Yeah, there's an immediacy to those channels that big media owners can't match. Right. You know, when it comes to a new product, or you know, and I think I mentioned earlier the unboxing trend is there, whether it's a new dress or it's a piece of technology, and then I think there's the teardown, which we've seen this week with the Apple Watch. Right. You know, big media companies can't hope to compete in terms of agility and speed. Right. So our approach is somewhat differently. We've kind of looked around, and I think it's appropriate for this type of venue, and said, okay, well, how do we partner with these innovators? Right. I think, you know, the phrase you use is they are entrepreneurs. And so how do we partner with these entrepreneurs? So if you take these YouTubers as a great example, where they've really started to deliver great value to brands and where they started to make a lot of money is when they're put into multi-channel networks and when a corporate entity comes in over the top. And I think Maker Studios has been mentioned several times during the course of this conference. So we see our role as that, I suppose, that corporate growth engine. We have an investment incubation called Mediapreneur, and it is focused on these new media startups. Oh,
look at that pitch. You incorporated that in so well, sir. That was incredibly well done.
Thank you.
Which actually leads into a question that I wanted to ask, which is what role do startups actually play in sort of your vision of how you get to this future of media content? Are you looking at acquisitions? Do the entrepreneurs that are in the media environment right now inform what y'all are going to be doing going forward, and then we'll just take it down the line. And we know about the Mediapreneur panel now. So
I think innovators have got a big role to play, and I think there's imitation. I think the reality is that we look around for great ideas around the world, and we'd see if we can launch those.
Right.
And we look at partnering, or we're looking at acquiring. So and that's another way we can grow. I think earlier someone was saying that particularly in regions such as Asia, there's great geographic growth opportunities where we can take existing products and services. Well, certainly as a corporation, we're looking at our neighborhood and where we can invest in growing companies as well as startups. So last week we invested in an Indonesian company, Indonesia's largest independent digital publisher. We took a majority stake. Yeah. And so that's a way that larger media companies can leverage what they've learned as corporate entities to partner or acquire these fast-growing companies. Right.
Do you have an acquisition strategy as well for your shop?
Oh yes, this is of course one of the points we came down here, besides our engagement in Beijing. So there's one point, John, I would like to stress again. Of course, you're completely right, and we will follow. The future of our company, which is still solid, traditional, is whether we find an answer on the question, are we able to reach our customer in his digital and social environment? That means, are we able to transform our today's contacts and our today's reachability into the new world, the digital world? And that is exactly where we are working on. And that means, number one, to find own solutions, to transfer our informations into that content. That is number one. Number two is a geographical aspect, to spread out in other parts of the world beyond the central part of Europe. Right. And number three is, of course, to enlarge our M&A acquisition.
And Burda Asia, are y'all acquiring startups too?
Yeah, well, we prefer to go slightly later. So we're investing in kind of A rounds and A and B and C rounds.
Is there a fund? Is there like a specific
fund?
fund?
No, there's no specific fund. I basically have to go to my boss. He looks at it and says yes or no in 20 minutes. But we're agnostic as to what we invest in. It doesn't necessarily have to be related to our core business. Right. And some of our most successful investments have had, frankly, nothing much to do with our core business. Right. Although we look for opportunities. So, for example, we have a lot of publications about women, fashion, so e-commerce, fashion. We have a very good fashion e-tailer called myteresa.com, which has done extremely well. It's based in Munich. So we will look for opportunities that are allied to our core business, but I'm not forced to look there. Right. So two of our recent investments have been one in search and one in medical tourism, for example.
Wow, medical tourism. Why not? Why not? Which actually brings me to what'll be my last question, and just a bit of a housekeeping note. We have about 10 minutes left for questions, if anyone wants to pose any. I'm supposed to use this thing, but it's not really working very well, so if you wanted to tweet at me, at @jshieber, with any questions that you might have, that might be a good way for us to do it. So it's just @jshieber on Twitter. You can tweet at me. I will look at your question. If it isn't stupid, I will pose it to the panel. If it is stupid, I won't. That's just the way it works. And I get to ask stupid questions because I'm up here. My last question is about this. What role will the Asian consumer play in shaping the future of media content? As you look at sort of how the power, the buying power is shifting to Asia, how does that change? Does that change what content looks like? Does that change what sorts of content you're providing globally? Do more things start to appeal to an Asian audience? Does that Asian influence sort of creep back into, not creep, that's the wrong word, but cross-pollinate into Western media as well? What, in terms of your businesses, is that what's driving things?
I think Asia is very different because if you look at traditional media, magazines being traditional media, magazines arrived in Asia in the early 70s, essentially. and they were family businesses, so there was no scale. So the whole of this industry, which is massive outside Asia, was constrained by the fact that there were no resources to have expensive printing plants that could print at scale 60,000 copies an hour. There was no massive distribution outlets. In Germany, we have 100,000 points of sale. That's more than the whole of Asia, every single country in Asia. If you add them all up, it comes to less than 100,000. So the business was automatically constrained to be small print runs and upscale, and with an advertiser base that's largely upscale, which has helped the industry survive. But magazines came in at the same time as color TV. So eyeballs almost from the get-go in Asia were on video and TV, and they will continue in that direction. So for me, Asia is smartphones and video on smartphones, and that's where I see it staying.
Anyone else want to? There are a few questions that are on this list. Some of them are not terrible. So we'll get to that. But does anyone else want to sally into my last foray into interrogation?
I would join what Peter said. When we decided on going to China, for instance, the first thought, of course, was we have about 3,000 titles on touristic informations on display. Why do not translate in Mandarin and go to China? And we worked on that idea. And the longer we worked on that idea, the more ridiculous it became. Because working in China, we quickly learned that the demands on the products, on the informations, on the format of the information is completely different. To make a long story short, at the end, we cut down that idea. We followed the motto and the mission of our company, which is a word from André Gide. If you are not encouraged enough to leave your country, to lose sight of your country, you won't find another continent. Following that mission, we left everything we have at home, and we went to Beijing, and we started from scratch.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I would sort of add to that is, as a Singaporean company, Asia is very much, and Southeast Asia in particular, is our backyard. So for us, being influenced by what's happening in Asia, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think from a technology standpoint, though, I think what's quite interesting, if we look at, say, the experience of South Korea, and we see the experience happening in Indonesia and India now, is that the smartphone is the ubiquitous device, and it's what's driving the greatest amount of change. So I think for us, if you're asking if the rest of the world, I'm not so sure about how Asia will be an engine room of change globally. I think certainly the amount of money that comes with Asia now is certainly influencing how people are making their business decisions. But certainly here locally, we're very focused on mobile, and we're very focused about how consumers consume content on mobile and how different that is from perhaps the ways that we've done traditionally. I think in other countries where they've still got a lot of legacy businesses there, they may not have quite that impetus. But certainly here locally, we have to be very, very sharp on that.
Huh. So there are quite a few questions, and some of them are actually interesting. As I said before. So this one is taking a fairly adversarial stance to what y'all are doing. Old media companies do not focus on changing customer needs, but on advertisers, revenues, profits. Isn't it just fair that they are taken out by startups that focus on the consumer? Do you just focus on advertisers' revenues and profits?
We love advertisers' revenues and profits. I adore them.
But don't you need a consumer to generate?
Of course, we have to focus on the consumer.
Right.
And we have a massive research company in Germany that does nothing but consumer research, both for brands and for our own brands. So yes, the consumer is hugely important. And in traditional media, we got the consumer feedback. We got it through letters to the editor. We got it through all the functions and the people that the editors would meet. Now we get it online. We get it very quickly. We don't try and be a slave to the consumer, because sometimes, they get it wrong. Right. I think this whole thing of trying to govern by polling is essentially a bad idea. I think you have to give some people an idea of what's going to work, and then let them go with it. So the consumer is important. I mean, Steve Jobs was always saying it's the consumer, it's the consumer, it's the consumer. However, this guy made stuff that he thought the consumer would like at the end of the day, and that's all there was to it. So it's a mixture of both. No, the consumer is very important, and particularly now. So we're spending more time, more money, more effort trying to, quote, unquote, understand the consumer.
And this is an interesting one. The way users consume content is vastly different on desktop versus on a mobile device. What are the key metrics we should be using to measure content performance on mobile? Joomag, how are you measuring content performance on mobile?
So the best metric is to have the average duration and the activity user had on that specific pages. Because as our magazines are interactive, and we also display the timing per page on the per page basis, so how much time people spent on some specific pages, and how much they navigate, which pages are read, which are not read, especially on a breakdown with the articles. So we're able to provide an in-depth analytics, and let's say if there was an article with bad layout for mobile devices, this will be clearly visible in this case.
The last question, we have 2 more minutes, and I'd like to pose this one to the entire panel because I think it's a little philosophical. Is there a future in geographical restrictions on access to content? Will censorship prevail in the internet era? Let's just leave on a high note, fellas. Come on.
So I can answer. So 2 years ago, Joomag was blocked in China due to the censorship because there was a content regarding Tibet.
Yeah.
And so the China government blocked us. So we're fighting for a year to get the website unblocked, but no one was responding. Eventually, at the end, we came to so we were able to negotiate with them, and they opened the website, but they required us to get the data centers in China and provide them access to block the content anytime they wish. So this is showstopper sometimes, and you need to do something. Like Google, eventually, they decide to quit China. And yeah. So it's still tough, I believe.
I'm not optimistic. I think governments, particularly authoritarian governments, will always seek to control media. And if you look at the structures in Asia, there are, I think Hong Kong and Singapore are the only markets where a foreigner can actually own a publishing company. Whereas in all the other markets, they can't own anything. Indonesia, Philippines, China, Vietnam, there is a sort of gray area where you can sort of operate. But basically, Thailand, you are constrained to 30%, although it was 49 when I came into Thailand. And the last thing the last military government did before this one, the day before they left power, was to change the media law without telling anybody, of course. So it is a difficult environment, and you have to decide whether to, in the case of China being a perfect example, whether you go with how they do things or whether you step out. That's it.
Yeah.
I think there's lots of different kind of drivers around the restrictions of how content can fly around the world. I think I would probably focus, I think, on the other part that I think was implied in the question, which is around the commercial drivers around that. So I think many people who are looking at sort of VPNs and getting around geo-blocks and so forth are doing it because they're sensitive to the timing and price of content and when it arrives on their shores. So I think that companies, for as long as there is an opportunity for them to maximize their profits by managing how content is distributed, will do that, and they'll seek to use technology to do it, and they'll seek to use the law to protect their interests there. I think what's going to happen is that as the consumer becomes more global and the business distribution model becomes more harmonized, then you'll see those barriers start to fall.
And with that, I think I'm going to say that, gentlemen, you've done amazing work in putting up with me for the 40 minutes that we've been on stage together. I very much appreciate it. It's been a wonderful panel. And if the audience wouldn't mind thanking our speakers, we'll get off stage. I think we're done. Thank you, gentlemen.